Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. While the 5th episode of Ahsoka Shadow Warrior gave us things that we would never believe that we would see in live action, what it is actually illustrating in those scenes is far more important, and turns out to be way more terrifying, at least for me. The scenes between Hayden Christensen's Anakin Skywalker and the young Ahsoka in the flashback scenes during the Clone Wars illustrated something home to me that the Clone Wars animated series never quite did. That being that Ahsoka Tano was literally a child when she was thrust into wartime. Something that really hasn't been touched on in the lore is how Ahsoka was actually crafted as a Jedi. Seeing Ahsoka in animation is one thing, as you always understand that she's supposed to be 14 years old at the time of the first season. However, seeing the Clone Wars and Ahsoka in live action at such a young age being thrust into a war that she did not ask for or even prepare for was quite the horrific moment. The message that the episode was trying to hit home was the Clone Wars impact on Ahsoka, and how the Clone Wars literally scarred Ahsoka Tano to this very day, to the point where she judges her own training extremely harshly. We get a look at Ahsoka's mind through the world between worlds, how she believes that she was not trained as a true keeper of the light, but rather trained in an era where the Jedi had utterly lost their way. This is the thing that the episode hits home. Ahsoka doesn't even believe that she is a true Jedi, because there's a part of her that believes she never received true training. To her, her master, Anakin Skywalker, trained her to be a warrior and a fierce combatant, but not necessarily a Jedi or a keeper of the peace. But the lesson that Anakin Skywalker has to her is that the Jedi must ever evolve. He explains that the eras in which Obi-Wan Kenobi was trained and Qui-Gon was trained is far different than the era that he was trained in and the era that he now must train Ahsoka in. He explains to her that the Jedi unfortunately are no longer keepers of the peace, but now must be soldiers. And in the end, he is pleased with how good of a soldier Ahsoka has become. However, Ahsoka herself does not want to impart upon the galaxy war and how to fight. Instead, she wants to become what she believes a true Jedi should be. Again, a keeper of the peace and the light side of the Force, not a foot soldier for a republic or for the Jedi. This is the moment that truly upsets Anakin Skywalker in the episode, as he explains to Ahsoka Tano that she does not understand, that to be a Jedi is something that is ever evolving. But the most important thing is he tells Ahsoka that she is a great warrior, but there is also so much more to her, and there is so much more to her training because there is so much more to Anakin. Anakin is explaining here that he's not just a soldier, he's not just the chosen one, but he can be whatever the galaxy needs him to be as a Jedi. But what's so shocking is even Anakin Skywalker had the opportunity to be trained in an era where there was not constant war. Ahsoka, especially by the time of the Ahsoka series, believes herself to be a weapon, a powerful force wielder, one who is extremely skilled at destruction and violence, because unfortunately, that is how she was trained. The final lesson of the episode, though, is quite brilliant. That is when Ahsoka Tano has the opportunity to strike down Darth Vader, or her master in Anakin. She holds the saber up to his throat, and can strike him down in anger in that moment if she wants to. At that moment, she believes that Vader has been completely corrupted by the dark side, corrupted by the same violence that threatens to corrupt Ahsoka Tano, and the same training that she experienced during the Clone Wars. Her eyes even turn the Sith yellow. However, we know that the lesson is hit home because Ahsoka Tano, despite all of her training and knowledge how to destroy, despite destroying the droids during all of the Clone Wars and becoming a trained soldier, in this moment, she chooses to turn away from that reality to prove that although she was trained in the fire, she is still so much more. She shows restraint, compassion, and forgiveness. Seeing all of the Clone Wars take place in live action really goes a long way to illustrate how a Jedi Padawan of this era would feel. How Barriss Offee, someone who eventually would turn on the Jedi and betray them because she was against the Clone Wars, might have felt. We often talk about the Clone Wars and how it impacted the wider Jedi Order, but not specifically the Jedi Padawans during this time. While the era of the Great Jedi Purge was terrifying, these Padawans, who were promised to be keepers of the peace and to help the innocents of the galaxy find enlightenment and easier times, were now thrown into a war that none of them asked for. They were Padawans, they had no say in the matter, but now they were forced to be soldiers, commanders, and one day, even generals. We learned that not only did Ahsoka Tano walk away from Anakin Skywalker in the Clone Wars and feel extreme regret, but that she also believed that part of Barriss was correct, that part of her training as a Jedi during the Clone Wars was flawed, and that perhaps this is why Ahsoka was not a Jedi, a sentiment which was of course completely correct as Anakin eventually hits home. While it is true that Ahsoka was born in the fire of the Clone Wars, that does not define her. It is important for a Jedi to be a great warrior, but it is also important for them to have compassion and an understanding. But these are things that Ahsoka was already born with and had a great understanding of. In the previous episode, for Baylan to put this into question, to call her only an instrument of death and destruction just like her master, shook her very foundation, because there was always a part of Ahsoka Tano that was holding her back. Belief that the Clone Wars made her not a true Jedi, and perhaps she was just an agent of death and destruction and not a Jedi at all. But this was the final lesson of a completely enlightened Anakin Skywalker, that there was so much more to being a Jedi than being a warrior, even if one was trained during the Clone Wars. He explains to her that they're going to make mistakes, and that people around her are going to die because of her. But she cannot lose track of the greater goal, that being a Jedi is necessary, and that she belongs to an important legacy of Jedi. It's also likely that Ahsoka questions the very legacy that she belongs to. While Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn were faithful Jedi, one of the first Jedi of this order, in Dooku, also embraced the dark side, just as Ahsoka's very master did in Anakin. She even blames him for this. However, the true brilliance of the episode is that it is Darth Vader that gives Ahsoka Tano the final and most important lesson, not Anakin. She already loves and trusts Anakin, but it is Darth Vader. It is what Anakin Skywalker has become that Ahsoka must overcome in herself. The idea that her master was far more dangerous than anybody ever realized. But in the end, she must accept that there is far more to him than Darth Vader. And because of that, she must accept that there is far more to her than simply being a weapon. The episode, though, really hammered home the terrors of war, and what it would be like for a 14-year-old child to be thrust into it. In animation, there is always that disconnect, but when you see a literal 14-year-old in the heat of battle, in the heat of the Clone Wars, and you truly understand how much of a traumatic experience this would be, it puts everything in a new perspective. Ahsoka was trained in the era where the Jedi were destroyed, where they had fallen so far, and that causes Ahsoka to believe that she is a product of their very mistakes, when in reality she can learn from them. She can choose to be the very best of who they were, because make no mistake, they were still Jedi. Anakin Skywalker was one of the greatest Jedi. She must learn to take the parts of them that truly matter, that although she is a weapon for death and destruction in truth, she can be the weapon for death and destruction for forces of light and good. She is a soldier. She will always be a soldier, but now she has learned that along with becoming a soldier, she also truly did become a Jedi. But anyway, my friends, what are your thoughts on this? Was this scene far more terrifying for you in reality and in live action than it ever was during the Clone Wars? And what are your thoughts on the interactions between Ahsoka Tano and Anakin? As always, thank you so much for giving me some of your time today, and may the Force be with you.